This happened 5 years ago. I was 33 and a freelance journalist, chasing a story that could change everything. I had heard of pyramids discovered under the ice in Antarctica. It felt like the opportunity of a lifetime. I thought it would be exciting, but I was wrong. The research station was small and cold. The walls creaked whenever the wind blew. I felt isolated, like the world had forgotten me. Every time I stepped outside, the sharp cold hit my face. The endless white snow stretched in every direction. It felt eerie, like the land was watching me. My breath was the only sound in the heavy silence. On the second day, I found something strange. I wandered farther out than I should have. There, half buried in the snow, was an abandoned tent. I moved closer, shivering from the cold. I pushed the flap aside and stepped inside. Dust floated in the dim light. Then I spotted a journal lying on the ground. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. They were filled with sketches and notes about weird weather patterns and strange events. As I read on, my skin crawled. I glanced outside, feeling like I was being watched. There was no one there, but I could feel something was off. Days dragged on in that place. I struggled to work. Every night, nightmares came for me. I kept seeing the pyramids, dark figures swirling around them. The other researchers started to act strangely. They whispered in corners, and their eyes darted around like they were scared. One night, I saw a guy staring out the window at the pyramids. I asked him what he saw. He didn't answer. He just kept staring. One evening, I decided to go to the pyramids. The snow crunched beneath my boots as I made my way there. I heard a low hum in the air. It made my skin prickle. I stepped into the pyramid. The shadows moved around me. Then I heard whispers, soft and urgent. They seemed to fill the whole room. Was it just my mind playing tricks? Still, I felt drawn to go further. A chill swept over me. Something was in that place, lurking. I stumbled back into the light just as the others arrived. They looked different, pale and frantic. Their eyes told me they were scared. Now, 5 years later, I can't shake the feeling of what I found. The journals, the shadows, the whispers, were they real or just products of my imagination? Did I lose my mind in that icy wasteland? I don't know. But something pulls at me still, a strange curiosity. A part of me wonders if I should go back. But maybe some places are better left alone. Maybe some secrets weren't meant to be uncovered. I needed to know what really happened that winter. 5 years had passed, but my dreams were still haunted by the pyramids. The whispers echoed in my head like an unfinished melody, and I couldn't escape the pull of Antarctica. I went back to the archives, poring over every detail of the research reports and journals I had from that trip. There was one report that stood out. It detailed a past expedition that claimed to have found anomalies near the pyramids, distortions in time and space. I sat there, my heart racing. Had I encountered something similar? I made a decision right then. I would return to Antarctica. I had to understand what was buried beneath the snow. Weeks later, I found myself back at the research station. It looked just as I remembered, cold, lonely, and suffocating. I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. Maybe I should have stayed home. I talked to a few of the researchers. They seemed friendly enough, but their eyes flickered with apprehension whenever I mentioned the pyramids. "Just stay away from them," one of them advised nervously. "We don't know what's down there." I brushed off the warning, but doubt seeped in. What did they know that I didn't? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the wind howl outside. I thought back to that journal I discovered. What if it had real answers? I had to find it. I climbed out of bed, determined to hunt it down. The research station was dark, shadows stretching eerily along the walls. I felt cold all over, as if the ice was creeping in again. I stepped out into the bitter night, cautiously moving towards the main building where I thought they kept the archives. The temperature dropped even further, and all I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. It felt wrong, like I was being watched again. As I reached the door, I noticed something, a light flickering in a nearby room. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I pushed the door open. Inside, I found the journal, open on a table, pages flapping as if the wind were alive. It looked aged, yet familiar. I approached it, and that's when I noticed something else. Strange sketches scribbled in the margins. They looked like the same dark figures I had seen in my dreams. Then everything went dark. The lights went out with a sudden crash of noise, plunging the room into blackness. My heart raced, and I stumbled backward. I strained my ears, trying to catch any sound in the oppressive silence. That's when I heard it. Whispers, low and urgent, swirling in the dark. They weren't just whispers of wind, they were voices, almost like a chant. My instincts screamed at me to run, but a mix of fear and fascination rooted me in place. What had awakened beneath that snow? Who or what was calling to me? My breath caught in my throat as the whispers grew louder. It felt like they were swirling around me, pressing in from all sides. I couldn't tell if they were familiar or foreign. The darkness was stifling. My instincts kicked in, pushing me to leave, yet my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. Then a bang echoed from the back of the room, jolting me. I snapped into action, racing back toward the door. My heart thundered as I fumbled for the handle, but my hands felt thick and clumsy. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to wrench it open, burst through, and stumble into the icy corridor. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I pressed my back against the wall, taking deep breaths, fighting to regain my composure. The whispers faded, but in their place, a strange sense of urgency settled in my gut. I couldn't ignore what I had just felt. It was as if whatever presence had been there wanted me to understand. I turned and headed back to my room, desperate to get to my notes. I needed to make sense of everything. In my mind, I was piecing together a pattern from my memories, but it was still too murky. How had I come to ignore the other expeditions? What had they experienced that made them so frightened? On the way to my room, I noticed another researcher standing outside their door. It was Dr. Klein, one of the few who had been here when I first arrived. He looked troubled, his features drawn tight. "Did you hear it?" he asked, lowering his voice as if the walls had ears. "Hear what?" I replied, though I knew exactly what he was hinting at. "The voices," he said, glancing over his shoulder. He looked as if he was weighing whether to admit something. "They've been happening more frequently. It's unsettling. There are things we just don't talk about." Unease washed over me. "What do you mean, things we don't talk about?" Klein opened his mouth, but quickly closed it, as if he was deciding not to speak. My frustration flared. "Maybe I wouldn't have to dig for information if you'd just tell me." "Fine," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There's been talk of anomalies in the field, equipment going haywire. Some people even claim they've seen figures moving among the ice. And the abnormalities." His voice trailed off, and I could see doubt flickering in his eyes. "The pyramids?" I pressed. "You must know more." He sighed again, clearly torn. "They don't let you near them. They're cordoned off for a reason. I can't say more. Just, please be careful." That warning lingered long after I parted ways with Klein. I felt the weight of his fear. What was happening here? I headed back to my room with more questions than answers. As I rummaged through my belongings, I caught sight of the journal again. Suddenly, I remembered something I hadn't fully examined, the margins with the sketches. I took a deep breath. I had to go back and find those markings. I needed to understand the connection to my dreams. The chilling fear returned, yet I knew I couldn't back down. I was on the precipice of something much bigger than myself. As I made my way back to the archives, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and the air felt heavier. I quickened my pace, heart pounding. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. Someone was following me. I turned a corner sharply, adrenaline coursing through me. My mind raced. I didn't want to look back, but I had to know. I slowed my pace, listening intently. The footsteps matched my own, a steady rhythm that sent chills down my spine. I pushed through the double doors of the archives and quickly scanned the room for a hiding place. Just beyond the rows of bookshelves was a small alcove where I could slip out of sight. I darted into it and pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breath. As I crouched there, I strained to hear. The footsteps stopped outside the entrance. My pulse quickened again. Who was out there? I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever it was meant me harm. Then I heard the door creak open. My stomach twisted as the figure stepped inside. It was Dr. Klein. Relief mingled with confusion. I couldn't let down my guard just yet. "Klein?" I whispered, barely audible. He glanced around the room, his expression anxious. "We need to talk. Now." I stepped out of the alcove, feeling the tension in the air. "What's going on? I thought you were following me." "No," he replied urgently, his eyes darting. "I was trying to find you. It's not safe here. We need to get to the pyramids." My heart sank. "The pyramids? But you said they were off limits." He gritted his teeth, glancing back at the door. "That was before everything escalated. People have gone missing. Some researchers have started to act strangely." "What do you mean, strangely?" "They're not themselves. They mumble about the voices or wave at things that aren't there. It's like they're losing grip on reality," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Now my fear was transformed into something sharper. "And you think going to the pyramids will help?" Klein nodded, a flicker of determination crossing his features. "I need you to trust me. I've seen things in the archives, images of the explorers who disappeared. Their notes. Something is connecting them to the voices. We can discover what happened." The urgency of the moment settled over us, the weight of it pressing. I had to make a choice. Stay put and risk being drawn in deeper, or investigate the very heart of the mystery. It felt reckless, but something had ignited within me. I needed answers. "Fine," I said. "Let's go, but we need to be careful." We slipped out of the archives and walked cautiously through the hallways. Each shadow felt alive, breathing with a history I couldn't comprehend. The dim light flickered overhead, as if it sensed our apprehension. Just outside the main exit, I stopped. "Do you have any idea what we're walking into?" Klein paused, a serious expression crossing his face. "I've seen the diagrams. They show structures beneath the surface, things that shouldn't be there. We need to find the truth." Then, without warning, a loud crash echoed nearby, reverberating through the building. My heart dropped. Instinctively, I turned to Klein, panic reflecting in his eyes. "We need to hurry," he urged, pulling me toward the door. As we stepped outside, the frigid air hit hard. I felt the tension crackle around us, as if the universe had shifted. In the distance, the pyramids loomed, draped in a veil of mystery and menace. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever lay ahead. That's when I noticed a figure standing by the pyramids, staring directly at us. My breath caught. "Who is that?" I whispered, pointing. Klein stepped closer, squinting. "I don't know, but we need to find out." As we moved toward the pyramids, a sense of dread settled deep within me. I was stepping into a darkness I could barely comprehend, but there was no turning back now. As we made our way toward the pyramids, the figure became clearer. It was a person, draped in dark clothing, standing too still. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity held me in place. "Just keep moving," Klein urged, pushing me forward. His urgency was palpable, as if he sensed the weight of something ominous looming over us. We approached cautiously, the crunch of gravel underfoot cutting through the quiet. The figure didn't flinch. Was it waiting for us? "Who are you?" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. It echoed off the ancient stones, swallowed by the night. Slowly, the figure turned. It was a woman, her face partially obscured by a hood. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice low and rough. The warning sent a shiver along my spine. "Why not?" I pressed, glancing at Klein for support. He looked back at the woman, his expression unreadable. "There are things beneath these structures," she continued, stepping closer. "Things that should never be disturbed." Klein's jaw tightened. "We need to know what happened to the researchers who vanished. Can you help us?" A flicker of recognition crossed her eyes. "You've seen them?" I didn't know what Klein had told her, but something in her tone unsettled me. "What do you mean?" "Their voices," she said, almost to herself. "It started with whispers, then it spread. It latches onto people." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about? Whispers?" "They call," she said, her gaze drifting past us. "Once you hear them, there's no going back." Klein took a step forward. "We won't know unless we go inside. We have to see what's down there." The woman hesitated, her eyes darting back to the dark maw of the pyramids. "You're not ready. Only madness lies within." Madness? What did she know? I felt a wave of anger rising. "We can't just walk away." "Think about it," she replied sharply, as if seeing through me. "What drives you? Answers? Or survival?" Her words rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I exchanged a glance with Klein, who seemed lost in thought. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from deep inside the pyramids. My heart pounded in my chest. "What was that?" I gasped, the ground vibrating beneath us. "Something's awakening," the woman said, backing away. "You must leave now." I opened my mouth to protest, but that's when I saw it. A shadow shifting inside the entrance, darker than the night. Panic surged through me. We were out of time. "Run!" Klein shouted, grabbing my arm. We turned and raced away from the pyramids, the sound of something chasing us rising in pitch. My mind screamed for answers, yet my body only wanted to escape. As we sprinted, I glanced over my shoulder. The woman stood there, watching us, arms crossed. Then she whispered something, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I heard a voice calling my name. Faint, but unmistakable. "Don't look back," Klein yelled, and I focused ahead, adrenaline driving us forward. But inside me, the voice lingered, and I knew we hadn't escaped whatever had been unleashed. We stumbled through the uneven terrain, the dim light of the pyramids fading behind us. Klein pulled me along, his grip firm, but my legs felt heavy, as if they were mired in sand. The echoes of the woman's warning wrapped around my thoughts. Something was awakening. "Are we safe?" I gasped, my chest burning. The air felt thick, weighed down by an unshakable tension. "For now," Klein said, but he didn't sound sure. His eyes darted around, scanning the shadowy landscape as if he expected something to leap from the darkness at any moment. We eventually slowed down, finding a spot behind a cluster of stones, breathing heavily. I leaned against the cool surface, trying to steady my racing heart. "What do you think she meant by whispers?" Klein shook his head, his face tense. "I don't know, but we need to figure it out. This isn't just about the researchers anymore." I swallowed hard. What if we're next? I didn't want to voice my fear, but it surged through me like ice water. Klein looked at me, his eyes sharp. "We can't think like that. We have to clear our minds and think strategically. We need to find a place to regroup." As we caught our breaths, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled for it and pulled it out, wondering if it would help us communicate with the outside world. But when I checked the screen, I froze. It was a message from one of the researchers who had gone missing, dated 3 days ago. "The whispers are getting louder. The darkness is coming for us. They know we're here." My throat tightened. "This can't be real," I uttered, disbelief flooding in. "They've been missing for weeks." Klein leaned over to look at my phone. "It has to be a hoax, a prank," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No one could have sent this, not from underground." Before I could respond, a low growl emanated from the direction of the pyramids. My stomach twisted as I realized we weren't alone. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart pounding anew. Yeah, Klein said, eyes wide. We need to move, now. We scrambled to our feet, scanning the area. The growl sounded again, closer this time. Driven by primal fear, we darted into the shadows, running as fast as we could. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around us like a blanket. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the corner of my eye. "Klein!" I shouted, skidding to a halt. He turned back toward me, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "What's wrong?" "That thing! Did you see it?" I stammered, breathless. It was there, lurking just out of sight, its presence heavy as a storm cloud. Klein shook his head. "Focus! We can't stop now!" But I felt rooted in place, a voice in my head growing louder. It called my name again. "No!" I shouted, squeezing my eyes shut. I needed to drown it out. Something crashed behind us, causing a shower of gravel to rain down. "Run!" Klein yelled again, and this time I obeyed. We took off, not stopping until the sounds of pursuit faded. After an eternity of sprinting, we ducked behind another cluster of rocks, gasping for air. I looked at Klein, desperate for answers. What if we can't escape? What if we can't get away from whatever this is? He shot me a glance, desperation etched across his features. We have to find a way out. There has to be more to it than this. Just then, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance, beyond the base of the pyramids. "Klein, there's something over there." "Let's check it out," he said, steeling himself. "But we have to be careful." As we crept toward the light, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. What was waiting for us? And would we be able to escape, or would the whispers consume us too? As we moved cautiously toward the flickering light, my heart raced in anticipation and dread. Each step felt weighted, like the ground beneath us could open up at any moment. Klein kept glancing back at me, but we pushed forward, drawn by some force I couldn't name. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating a small clearing. It came from what appeared to be a rudimentary shelter, a makeshift tent. I caught my breath, the sight jolting through me like a shock. Was someone else out here, or was it another trap? "Be ready," Klein whispered, signaling for silence. He crept forward, his silhouette swallowed by the darkness. I felt a surge of fear, wanting to call him back, but I didn't move. The tent loomed ahead, the light dancing eerily around the edges. Suddenly, the light dimmed, then blazed back to life. Klein hesitated, then poked his head inside. It felt like forever as I stood there, tension coiling in my gut. Finally, he beckoned me over. "Come on," he said, his voice steady despite the urgency in his eyes. "You need to see this?" I took a breath, steeling myself, and stepped inside. The air was thick and cool, smelling of damp earth and something I couldn't quite place. An array of strange symbols adorned the inside walls, painted hastily in glowing neon colors. The patterns didn't make sense, but they felt familiar, as if they were calling to a deeper part of me. "What do you make of these?" Klein asked, his eyes scanning the symbols. "I don't know." I reached out to touch one, and a jolt of energy coursed through me, vivid and shocking. I pulled back, eyes wide. "It's like they're alive." Just then, the whispers returned, louder this time. They wrapped around me, each syllable clawing at my mind. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperation twisting my stomach. "Klein, we need to leave." "I need to—" Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed outside the tent, shaking it on its foundations. "What was that?" I shouted, fear flooding my voice. Klein's face went pale as the storm of noise grew around us. "We can't stay here." The light flickered again, now erratic, casting shadows that twisted into ominous figures. My instincts screamed for us to run. "Klein!" I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. As we dashed outside, the world flooded back into focus, but it was chaos. The very ground shuddered, sending tremors into our feet. The pyramids loomed over us, dark and foreboding. Something was stirring, waking, and we were standing in its path. "What do we do?" I shouted over the cacophony. "We need to find those researchers. They could have answers," Klein yelled back, scanning our surroundings. Just then, something darted across our path. It was quick, impossibly fast, a mere blur against the night. I could hardly process it when something new struck me. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, its eyes glinting with an unfathomable hunger. I gasped, stepping back as a wave of cold rolled over me. "Klein!" But a deep, echoing voice boomed from behind us, wrapping around my thoughts like chains. "You should not have come here." My breath caught. Whatever had awakened was aware of us now. We had to act fast, but I felt paralyzed by dread. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart hammering in my chest. Darkness pressed in around me, but it wasn't complete. I could still see the faint outlines of the tent. The whispers were gone, but the oppressive silence felt even worse. Had I passed out? "Klein?" I called, my voice shaky. No response. Panic surged inside me. I scrambled to my feet, feeling the ground shift beneath me. I stumbled forward, desperate to find him. When I stepped back outside, the scene was both familiar and terrifying. The world wasn't still. It was alive with movement. Shadows flickered against the pyramids, darting just beyond the reach of the dim glow from the tent. I squinted into the chaos. "Klein!" I shouted again, my voice echoing eerily in the night. Then I spotted him. He was crouching near one of the pyramids, waving frantically. I rushed over, relief rushing through me. "What happened?" I breathed, catching my breath as I reached him. "Something attacked," he said, breathless. "I think it was after the light." His eyes darted toward the dark shapes. "We saw something. Something not human." Not human? The thought sent shivers down my spine. Klein grabbed my arm, gripping it tight. "Look!" He pointed toward the clearing we had just left. The tent still stood, but it seemed different, as if it had shifted in the chaos. "It's gone." I turned to where the tent had been, but there was nothing except uneven ground and scattered debris. "What do you mean it's gone?" "Like it's fading away." He hesitated, a look of dread crossing his face. "I think we're not supposed to be here. We need to find a way out." Before I could respond, a chilling howl echoed through the wind, electric and piercing. I felt a tremor beneath my feet, as if the very ground was warning us to leave. My pulse raced. "We can't stay here much longer." As we stepped away from the pyramid, the shadows flared again. Figures emerged, more than before. Their eyes glinted with that same terrifying hunger. I could see them clearly now, elongated forms, moving with an unsettling grace. "Klein, we have to run!" I yelled, fear fueling my voice. But as we turned to escape, a blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the clearing. It was brighter than anything I had ever seen, searing through the night. I shielded my eyes, but it pulsed in a way that felt alive. A deep, reverberating voice rose above the chaos. "You have crossed into domains unknown. The price you pay is steep." I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me as darkness swallowed the light again. "Run!" Klein shouted, pulling me sharply to the side as the ground beneath us shook once more. The shadows shifted, trying to corner us, and I realized we were trapped. I needed to think of something fast, but my mind raced in a haze of panic. Then I remembered the symbols inside the tent. They felt powerful, unexplainable. "Wait! The symbols!" I gasped, my heart pounding. "What if they're the key?" Klein's eyes widened. "We have to go back." But before I could answer, I heard another voice, a cold whisper. "You cannot escape your fate." And then everything changed again. I stumbled as cold air whipped around me. The dark silhouettes loomed closer, their shapes twisting and shifting like smoke. "This way!" I shouted to Klein, pulling him along. We needed to find cover, something solid. The shadows were closing in, their whispers raspy and hungry. We dashed behind one of the pyramids. My lungs burned as I tried to catch my breath, but the urgency of the moment overshadowed my exhaustion. "We have to get back to the tent," I insisted. "I think the symbols can protect us." Klein shook his head. "We don't even know what they mean. What if they make it worse?" I hated that he was right. We were already in over our heads, and anything could set off whatever those things were. But deep down, I felt a strange pull toward the tent. It was like a compass guiding me back. Then a rustling noise tore through the air, and I froze. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Klein nodded, his eyes wide. "What is it?" Before I could respond, the ground quivered again, and two of the shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. They moved with eerie precision, their eyes illuminated like the embers of a dying fire. I felt the weight of their gaze settle upon us, and every instinct screamed at me to run. "Now!" I urged, pulling Klein with me toward the space between two pyramids. We dashed, trying to stay low. I could barely think, overwhelmed by the need for survival. As we approached what I hoped was the safety of the tent, I caught sight of faint glimmers on the ground, symbols etched into the earth, almost obscured by dirt. It was as if they were trying to claw their way back to the surface. "Look!" I gasped. "The symbols! They're here too!" Klein glanced down. "Do you think they're connected to the ones inside?" "I don't know," I admitted, but the rush of adrenaline pushed my body forward. "We need to find out." We reached the tent, but it looked different now, more translucent, like a mirage fighting to hold its form. I stepped inside, and the air buzzed with energy. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly in the darkness, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my racing heart. "What do we do?" Klein asked, panic threading through his voice. "I think we have to activate them somehow," I replied. "Maybe if we replicate the ones outside." I focused, remembering the symbols' shapes. I reached out, tracing the air, trying to summon what felt like a connection to something beyond this world. It was risky, but I felt I had no other choice. Suddenly, the tent vibrated, and a low hum filled the air. Then, a scream pierced the night. I jerked my head toward the entrance. The shadowy figures had merged into a swirling mass, and they were closing in fast. I felt my heart race even faster. "Do it!" Klein shouted, his voice resonating with desperation. I pressed my fingers to the symbols, feeling the energy coursing through me as the ground shook beneath us. And that's when I saw it. An unexpected symbol appeared in the vortex of darkness, glowing fiercely. It wasn't just a shape. It felt alive, almost sentient. But what it meant, I couldn't guess. As it pulsed, so did the shadows. I couldn't tell if it was an escape or a trap. "Klein, we need to—" Everything went black. I gasped and found myself lying on the ground, the cold biting into my skin. Confused, I struggled to sit up, scanning my surroundings. The retreating shadows were gone, replaced by the pale light of dawn filtering through the ice-capped peaks. My breath clouded in the air, and I staggered to my feet, disoriented. "Klein!" I called out, my heart racing. Panic surged as I searched for him. The remnants of my adrenaline-fueled escape rushed through me, the memories of the voices and shadows lingering just beyond reach. "Over here!" His voice echoed from the edge of a small outcropping. I ran toward him, relief flooding me as I saw he was unhurt, although his face was pale and drawn. "Do you remember what happened?" Klein asked, breathing heavily as he scanned our surroundings. The pyramids loomed in the distance, no longer merely menacing, but oddly silent. "I thought we were going to—" "Something happened," I interrupted. "I don't know what, but I think we should get away from here." I felt it, a bone-deep need to leave this place behind, like an ancient instinct warning me of danger still lurking in the shadows we couldn't see. Klein nodded, shifting on his feet, looking torn. "But we need those answers. What we found inside the tent, the symbols, They were powerful. I shook my head, feeling an uncomfortable weight settle in my stomach. Those things, the voices. I hesitated, the memory washing over me like a chill. It wasn't just a fantasy, Klein. I think we tapped into something we shouldn't have. A flicker of doubt crossed his face as he glanced back at the pyramids, uncertainty clouding his gaze. But if there's a chance we could help those missing? Help? I scoffed, an edge creeping into my voice. We barely escaped with our lives. What makes you think we could help anyone? Klein looked at me, determination competing with concern. I can't just walk away knowing what we might have uncovered, even if it's dangerous. I understood that impulse, the reporter's urge to seek the truth, but the gnawing dread twisted my heart. And what if digging deeper puts us in danger again? I almost succumbed to those whispers, those voices in the dark. I took a step closer, gazing into his eyes. What if it was always meant to be a warning? Silence enveloped us, and in that stillness, I felt the weight of the icy landscape pressing down, still watching, still aware of what had transpired. Klein looked back at the pyramids again, lost in thought, and I felt my resolve shatter beneath the cold. Let's get to the station then, he finally said. We can gather everything we have, make sense of it safely. As we turned away from the pyramids, heading toward the research station, I felt an unfamiliar heaviness in my chest. Questions swarmed in my mind. Were the pyramids really just structures of ice and stone? What secrets were buried beneath that ancient facade? And the whispers, would they forever echo in my subconscious? It was a choice I couldn't make just yet. As we walked away, I glanced back one last time, the sun starting to rise over the glacial horizon, hinting at another day. Was the threat gone, or merely retreating, waiting for the right moment to rise again? In my mind, the answer remained elusive, like the whispers that had danced just out of reach. Despite having escaped, the shadows followed, clinging to my thoughts with a haunting insistence. I'd made it out, with my life intact, but my soul still questioning. I couldn't shake the feeling that the stories of the pyramids were far from over. Would we ever truly understand, or would it always remain a mystery, lingering just beneath the surface of our reality? As I stepped into the research station, my heart settled in a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. I realized I wouldn't escape it easily. Something deep within me stirred, a familiar pull toward those shadows. And though I decided to face the daylight, a small part of me would always be drawn to the darkness.